Welcome, everyone, to the Gridiron Review Podcast. I'm Zach, that's Jack, and we are back for episode 3 of our Offseason in Review series. Today we are covering the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that was somehow in the playoffs in the past 2 seasons with Old Man Ben at quarterback and one of the worst run defenses in the league. Is this offseason the year that it finally catches up to them, in our opinion, or do they continue to find the odds? Find out now.
On the offensive side of the ball, their key losses, Kalen Ballage, a nice trio of receivers, and Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, and return specialist Ray McLeod. They also lost tight end Eric Ebron and 3 linemen, Try Turner, Zach Banner, BJ Finney, and of course, Ben Roethlisberger. Finney and Banner are both still free agents, so if they decide that they need more depth at the offensive line, that's still a possibility to bring them back. In terms of players retained, offensively, the only one of note was Chukwuma Okorafor. And in terms of free agent pickups, they took Mitch Trubisky from Buffalo, Gunnar Olszewski from the Patriots, Miles Boykins from the Ravens, and Mason Cole and James Daniels for the offensive line. When you look at what they did offensively, I think that there's a really good chance that they can open it up this year with 2 quarterbacks in Pickett and Trubisky fighting for the job that, can actually throw the football. It should open up more doors to run a bigger playbook than Najee up the middle and Hitch in the middle of the field. The issue here is who's the veteran in the receiver room. Claypool certainly hasn't acted like one, and that has nothing to do with his ability to play football. I still think that he needs to take a giant leap forward this year with Smith-Schuster gone and Washington gone. And Deontay Johnson sitting out isn't doing him or the team any favors. I think going into camp, if he continues to sit out, we could watch someone like Olszewski or their 4th-round pick, Calvin Austin, take the first team reps at slot and really impress. And if they don't have drop issues, I don't see why you don't just part with Deontay Johnson at that point. And it's upsetting because Deontay Johnson has the ability and all the skills needed to become one of the best slots in the league. Yet, you look at what he did last year, and he started off red hot. And as they went down the stretch, the drops came back. And in the receiver room too, in the second round, you take George Pickens, who we love, elite run blocker. No one came even close in this draft class. And he's incredible at tracking the deep ball. But is he going to get suspended week 1? Who knows?
Yeah, all the jokes coming out about him are some of the best things that come out of the draft. His the one with SpongeBob saying he's just standing there menacingly when he was drafted, that's one of my favorites. But I do agree. I think Pickett at the worst allows, or if it's Trubisky, if he does beat him out, they allow Claypool and Pickens to run a go route and not worry about it getting underthrown. I know there was a lot about Claypool's maturity and how he had a bad year, but if you watch it, half the time he was open, it was underthrown by a good 10 yards. And they at least can get the ball there. Even if, Trubisky wins or if it is Pickett, I don't know what upside they offer beyond mid-level starting quarterback. I think Pickett could have some upside beyond that, but, the concerns about him being more than Ryan Tannehill are real. I mean, that was who I thought he reminded me of. And Tannehill brought the Titans to the playoffs over, for the past couple of years, but as far as like the offense with all their weapons that they have, I don't know that Pickett is the best player to bring all of their skill sets out. I think, like you said, the Calvin Austin pick feels like a warning to Deontay Johnson. I know he's had some good years, but that's with Ben relying on him on 1-yard routes and stuff. And I just don't know what his true upside is as a receiver. He's very slippery. He's a great route runner, but his drops come in bunches. And I know a lot of the good receivers do suffer drops, but it just feels like he drops 5 a game sometimes. And I don't know why he's holding out. That's certainly a decision. I don't think he's proven to be an alpha receiver. And it hurts when you have a rookie quarterback and a first-year quarterback on your team and your supposed highest target guy is just sitting out. I don't love it. I think their receiver depth, they lost the 3 that they did, and they replaced them pretty evenly. Miles Boykin and George Pickens, if you had them on the same field, there's no run blocking duo in the NFL better at wide receiver. Claypool, if you can get him to mature a little bit, although to be fair, he's had 1 mistake on the field. It's not like he's a distraction, I would argue. He's certainly not the most mature player out there, but I also don't think he's like Antonio Brown levels or anything like that.
Well, speaking of that, like we talk about it all the time, is look at who he had as
Yeah.
mentors, Juju and AB. So obviously there's not going to be a whole lot of leadership skills learned from those two.
Right. And the only player that I don't know that they replace, and this is not a big deal because of how much Freiermuth showed, is Eric Ebron. I mean, Connor Hayward can get some snaps at tight end, but he's severely undersized for a traditional tight end. Does Zach Gentry take some step forward to be a decent number two? I guess it's possible. I think they'll actually run more spread. I assume they did that last year. I think they have the personnel to run 4 receiver sets with, the fourth being Boykin, or if you think Ochevsky or Calvin Austin, if you want another field stretcher. I think the offense is going to be good. I don't know that it's up there with some of the other AFC offenses, mainly again because you don't know what Pickett offers or if it is Trubisky. But their issues are going to be on the defense, and they are some massive issues. They re-signed Montravius Adams, Marcus Allen, Akilo Witherspoon, Terrell Edmonds, Miles Killebrew, and Carl Joseph. A lot of depth pieces. Edmonds and Joseph, I think, will play some meaningful snaps. They did lose Joe Schobert and Joe Hayden, who is still a free agent at the moment, so he could be coming back. But they basically switched out Schobert with a free agent signing of Miles Jack. It's probably an upgrade. There was some murmurs last year that Miles Jack is not that good as compared to what people think. But Schobert had a couple great seasons in Jacksonville too, and yet for some reason is just average apparently. So I think Jack's probably an improvement, but the biggest issue is the run defense, and we will go further in depth in a minute. And I don't know that Miles Jack, who's probably their biggest addition to the defense,
Him or Levi Wallace, who's going to replace Hayden.
Yeah. But as far as the run game goes, I think Miles Jack is probably the biggest piece, and I don't know that he pushes the needle for them. And you're right, they did add Levi Wallace to, for now, replace Joe Hayden, although I think we both agree we'd like to see them re-sign Hayden too. And they added DeMonte Kazee. As Jax notes in the article that we're going to publish with this, their safety depth is very good now, and their corner room is not the best. I think adding Hayden would improve it, but I still don't think it's going to hold up against a lot of the AFC teams. When you play Buffalo, any of the teams in the West, anything like that, I just think their defense is going to fall apart. And then you look at their own division, and when you draft players to try and like Jack was talking about earlier, to me, Stephon Tuitt is probably going to miss the whole year with injury / retirement. So they need another defensive tackle. And when you look at the team last year, you think, oh, they need to go get a run stuffer because of how bad it was. You had TJ Watt go for the sack record, and they were still the worst run defense in the league. Not that those two correlate, but the point is you can have great pass rush all day. When you look at your own division and you have Lamar, you have all the Ravens running backs. You have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and the rest of the Browns team. And then you have Joe Mixon, and if they have anybody else that, Chris Evans, if he wants to take a step forward, or Samaje Perine, you need to be able to defend the run in your own division. And I just think, DeMarvin Leal was a great pick in the 3rd round, but you already have him in Chris Wormley. He's not going to make your run defense any better. And really, they added a linebacker in the 7th, but that was the only defensive piece in the draft that they added. And I think they should have gone after either a trade up for someone like Travis Jones in the 3rd, or just one of the other big defensive tackles that was there.
Our issue here has nothing to do with TJ Watt or the pass rush. I think you look at the AFC and think, shootout. So having the pass rush makes sense. The issue is that every powerhouse in the AFC has a running back committee that, hey, we're playing the Steelers. Let's change our game plan for this week. Buffalo's got Cook and Singletary. The Chiefs have Jerrion Ely, Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think they re-signed Darrell Williams, right?
Yeah, and Ronald Jones. No, they didn't sign. Darrell Williams went.
Oh, to Arizona.
They got Ronald Rojo.
And then the West, Jacobs, Javante. The point
Gordon.
is, any one of these teams can say, look, it's the Steelers. Let's just run on them. And, let's take TJ Watt out of the equation. And that's not to say that Watt isn't a good run stuffer because, he does a little bit of everything. But to know that Tuitt has no idea if he's coming back or not because of, like Zach said, the injury and potential retirement, to take another pass rusher, you may not have been 32nd in run defense last year, but I can assure you, you are going to be borderline 32nd this year.
They're definitely on their way.
I mean, you look at, the 1st round, and even if you want to argue that Jack makes your run defense that much better, in the secondary, you didn't address corner at all. Like, I can't imagine a situation where if Buffalo or any of these AFC teams want to throw the ball, Levi Wallace, Akello Witherspoon, and Justin Lane are going to hold up. This is the whole reason that Buffalo got kicked out of the playoffs last year, because they had no secondary. And we talk about it, like Pickett and Trubisky are fairly similar guys, and someone like Willis falls to the third. Looking back, obviously hindsight's 2020, but would you have gone corner over Pickett? And I know that Pickett was your guy, but neither Trubisky at the moment or Pickett have the upside. So let's assume here that Trubisky pulls out the job and he proves that Matt Nagy was the issue. Now you have Kenny Pickett, who does not have the upside of a Howell or Malik Willis, sitting on the bench. So now what do you do with him while your corners are suffering? Now you got to live with the decision to take the only quarterback taken within rounds 1 and 2, sitting on your bench while you get lit up by Josh Allen throwing for 500 yards.
Yeah, and to your point, when you talk about like the Bills, I think that's a pretty fair comparison, because when the Bills got to the playoffs, Tre'Davious White was injured, so their secondary was not the best, but they had elite safeties, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, and the Steelers are really set up in a similar way. Their secondary is not the best, and their safeties are, and look at what happened. The safeties can only do so much for you, and they can't stop the run, as we said over and over, but they can't do much against the pass right now either. I just want to bring this to our record, and we'll continue going. We have them at 4-13, fourth in the division. Our grade for them is good moves, but are the issues fixed? As we've been talking about here, it's hard not to like their draft at all. Like, Kenny Pickett went in the first, as Jack said, he was the only one taken in the first 2 rounds. So apparently they picked the right one in the eyes of every other team in the NFL. But if he beats out Trubisky, if Trubisky's just not that good, then it's a good pick. But Pickens, again, a good pick. Was a wide receiver your biggest need? And then going and getting Calvin Austin, a good pick, especially in the fourth. But was that your biggest need? It doesn't feel like it. And there was a lot of corners in the fourth still. I don't know exactly where Kobe Bryant was taken, but he was still there. Tariq Woolen, if you wanted a really high upside, low floor guy, was still there. And a few other corners, they're probably going to start for some of these teams that took them. And it just, good moves. They brought in some good free agents. They made some really good draft choices, at least for player and value. Like, we liked Marvin Leal. I really liked him. I thought he was a second-round tackle, but as a pass rusher. And you could have the best pass rush in the league, but if 3 other teams in your division can do a quick slant and their receivers can just blow by your corners, or they can just run the ball all day on you, that neutralizes the pass rush.
Not even that. How do you plan on stopping Baltimore?
Yeah. And when you look at 4-13, we know Steelers fans are going to be up in arms, but do you honestly believe that they can beat Baltimore's defense and Baltimore's run game? Because we don't. Do you honestly believe they can beat Cleveland's defense and Cleveland's run game? And this isn't even talking about if Deshaun Watson plays the whole season, because we don't. And look at the Cincinnati Bengals. They don't have anyone that can cover Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Because do you think, and even then, Joe Mixon and an improved offensive line could dominate them? And a decent defense, not the best, but still a decent defense. I just don't see how Pittsburgh pulls out a win against any of their own division. And then the AFC is just a really, really hard conference to win in this year. If this was the NFC, we may be having a different discussion about what their record may be. But it's the AFC where all the AFC West teams are better than Pittsburgh. Buffalo obviously is better than Pittsburgh, and the Jets and the Dolphins are making really good moves. And the AFC South is the AFC South. They probably can, I believe some of their wins came from that division. But
even at that, Jonathan Taylor and Derrick Henry live in that division. Yep. You're not going to stop either one of those.
Not to mention James Robinson and Travis Etienne. Like, there's just any team that's got a good run game could give them huge problems. And 4-13 seems harsh because their offense is better. It is. But their defense is just going to be, in our eyes, a major problem, with the only saving grace potentially being that they brought in Brian Flores, who is, as Jack told me, I believe, a linebackers coach, but he'll probably have a bigger hand in it than that. And I don't feel like he is going to make a big enough difference to keep this defense from being one of the league worst run defenses, and probably just overall one of the league worst defenses. Because when you look at, like, the Chiefs defense got obliterated in the playoffs. What did they do? They drafted 3 corners. They went and signed and replaced Tyrann Mathieu with Justin Reed. They got athletic linebackers that can cover guys. And they went and got a defensive end who's decent in the run and the pass. That's a good example of a really bad defense that just made move after move. Oh, that's another Joshua. The corners that the Chiefs drafted in the 4th round and later were there. Like, it just, when you think about the moves, as we said, they're good moves, but they did not fix the problems. And I think the Steelers probably are in more of a rebuild than people think. And they could just let Deontay Johnson walk after this year, and they're going to have to invest more into the defense after this year because I don't think it'll be pretty.
To Zach's point, you look at a team like the Chargers, who were just as bad in run defense, and they went out and signed Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson, traded for Khalil Mack. They went out and got J.C. Jackson to improve the secondary. They did everything right. And I get that Pittsburgh might not have been able to make the moves that they did, but, follow the same idea. Hey, we're not good at this. Let's address this. And to Zach's point here, Steelers fans aren't going to be happy seeing 4-13, but you got to take in consideration everything outside of your own team. And in my opinion, the Steelers 2 years ago were the worst 11-0 team of all time. They have been fake good for years now. The fact that they've been in the playoffs is kind of pathetic to the AFC, and it's not going to slide this year.
Yeah, especially
I just much needed step back.
Especially when you think that they made the playoffs last year with the Ravens being hurt without Lamar and the Browns browning their way to the end of the season. But this year, the Browns made huge improvements. And even if Deshaun Watson is suspended, their team is better than Pittsburgh's, I think, especially the defense. The defense is where it matters. And Baltimore, their defense is insane. It just is. They have 3 really good safeties. They've got a massive defensive line room with Calais Campbell, Travis Jones, Michael Pierce, and all the edge rushers that they have. Not to mention if Brandon Williams gets brought back. And the corners, the insane corner depth. Like Cleveland, great corner depth, pretty good run defense. Not the best probably, but still good. And Cincinnati is Cincinnati. They improved across the board.
Watch their run last year. Their defense stepped up heavily down the stretch.
Yep. And I just don't think Pittsburgh addressed some needs. They addressed the quarterback, which was probably the biggest need for them. But, it's just I think their defense is going to be worse than the league. And I don't think they'll be one of the worst. They'll have a decent amount of sacks, but their run defense is going to be bad, and their pass rushing defense.
I was going to say, but are they going to compete for the sack title again? Because, if your corners can't cover, Watt can't get there immediately. With Tuitt gone, they can double Watt now.
I just think they're in trouble, and I think Steelers fans are going to be in for a shock when they're going to call for Mike Tomlin's job, which I don't think is fair.
It's not.
I don't think he'll get fired, for the record. But now, on the flip side, you have Brian Flores in the coaching staff now. It's just like a little interesting thing that you might see. So I think Pittsburgh is in a mini rebuild. I think they address some needs. If Deontay Johnson walks, they still have a good receiving core next year. And they can draft all defense because I think they're going to need to.
The only other point that I want to bring up about the draft class is we're going to go back to Kenny Pickett. And I know that this is the dumbest stat, but his hand size. He's playing in the north where there is a lot of cold weather and snow. In the early part of the season and practices where if you're indoors, whatever. Hand size is, if he gets the job done, he gets the job done. But is he going to be able to hold the ball if it's wet, if there's snow, if there's this, there's a lot of factors in where he got drafted where that actually could make a difference.
Yeah, for the record, as Jack said, we think it's a dumb thing to worry about normally. Hand size is heavily overrated. We think there probably is something to it, but Kenny Pickett's hands are that small that it does garner consideration when you're going, like Jack said, to one of the most weather-affected teams and divisions in football. So it's just something that you're going to want to watch out for. He'll probably be fine, but, you could get into December or November and think this isn't good.
I mean, people look at Joe Burrow, who had small hands, too, and he was successful. Yeah, but Pickett's hands are significantly smaller than Burrow's.
Yeah. I believe they said he would have the smallest hands of any starting quarterback in football, right?
I think even in history. Not sure about that one, though.
Well, either way, we don't think hand size is something worth overanalyzing. Like, should he still have been a first rounder? Yeah, I think so. I don't think the hand size really was like a big factor, nor do I think if he would have had normal size hands, he would have been a top 10 pick. I don't think that's what sunk him. But this is an experiment. We've never seen a quarterback with this small hands. And it's just, as we can't say enough, like, it's got to be part of his evaluation. How does he fare in the first half versus in the second half? Hopefully he's fine. But overall, as we said, we think they made some good additions, but their defense is going to be a major issue that is going to take probably a year or two to fix. This concludes our Steelers episode. Stay tuned for our conclusive episode tomorrow with the Cincinnati Bengals.